Listen closely. Before the world claps for you, before they recognize your grind, before they respect your vision, you have to respect yourself. Too many people are starving for love from the outside while ignoring the power already living inside them. You wake up every day carrying greatness, but if you don't believe it, the world won't either. Loving yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's the foundation of every win, every comeback, every legacy you'll ever build. When you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, your life doesn't just change, it levels up. Self-love is not a feeling you wait for, it is a standard you live by. At its core, self-love is self-respect, and self-respect shows up first in how you allow people to treat you. The way you answer messages, the way you tolerate excuses, the way you let someone waste your time or drain your energy, all of that sends a message. Whether you say it out loud or not, you are constantly teaching people what is acceptable in your life. If you keep tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, and neglect, people don't suddenly wake up and treat you better. They simply follow the rules you've already set. Self-respect means deciding that your time matters, your energy is valuable, and your peace is non-negotiable. Many people confuse kindness with self-sacrifice. They think being loving means always being available, always forgiving, always understanding. But real self-love understands that giving without boundaries leads to resentment, exhaustion, and loss of identity. When you respect yourself, you don't over-explain your worth. You don't beg for basic decency. You don't stay in spaces that constantly require you to shrink. Self-respect is quiet, firm, and consistent. It doesn't argue. It simply removes itself from situations that don't align with its values. When you begin respecting yourself, something uncomfortable happens at first. Your circle starts to change. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may pull away. Some may accuse you of changing, becoming distant, or acting different. But what's really happening is that you're no longer available for disrespect. You're no longer accepting. Chaos disguised as connection. That's not loneliness. That's growth. It's the natural consequence of raising your standards. You're choosing quality over quantity, peace over popularity, alignment over approval. Self-respect also means being honest with yourself about what drains you. It means recognizing when you're staying in conversations, relationships, or environments out of fear rather than love. Fear of being alone, fear of disappointing others, fear of starting over. But self-love teaches you that being alone with peace is far better than being surrounded by people who constantly cross your boundaries. You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to be true to yourself. Respecting yourself requires courage because it often demands action, not just intention. It means saying no when it's easier to say yes. It means walking away even when you still care. It means choosing long-term self-worth over short-term comfort. And once you do, the way people interact with you changes. Some step up, some step out. Both outcomes are wins, because anyone who remains will meet you at the level of respect you've established. Here's a simple but powerful example. Imagine someone who constantly shows up late to meet you, cancels plans last minute, and only reaches out when they need something. At first, you tell yourself they're busy, they didn't mean it, you're being understanding. But over time, you feel frustrated and undervalued. If you continue accepting this behavior without addressing it, you're silently telling them that your time doesn't matter. Self-respect would look like clearly communicating your boundary and, if nothing changes, reducing access to you. You stop rearranging your schedule, you stop overgiving, you don't argue or attack. You simply adjust your behavior to match your worth. Suddenly, either they respect your time or they fade away. In both cases, you win because you chose yourself. The most important part of self-respect is consistency. You can't enforce boundaries one day and ignore them the next. People test limits not because they're evil, but because they're human. When you consistently show up for yourself, you build inner trust. You start believing your own words. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. And that inner confidence becomes visible. It changes the way you walk, speak, and decide. When you truly love yourself, you no longer chase people, validation, or acceptance. You attract respect by embodying it. You become someone who doesn't need to announce boundaries. They're felt. And from that place, your relationships become healthier. Your mind becomes clearer, and your life becomes more aligned. Self-love isn't loud, it's not dramatic. It's the quiet power of knowing your worth and refusing to negotiate it. Looking outside for validation is one of the most common traps that keeps people stuck, insecure, and hesitant to fully step into their power. From an early age, many of us are conditioned to measure our worth by applause, approval, likes, praise, or recognition. We are taught, directly and indirectly, that success only counts when it is acknowledged and that confidence must be confirmed by others. Over time, this creates a dangerous habit, outsourcing our self-worth. When your confidence depends on opinions, your peace is never truly yours. It becomes rented, fragile, and constantly at risk of being taken away the moment approval disappears. The problem with external validation is not just that it's unreliable, but that it places your identity in the hands of people who may not understand your journey, your vision, or your struggle. People only see fragments of your life, highlights without the grind, results without the sacrifice. When you let their opinions define you, you give them authority over your emotions and decisions. One compliment can lift you up, but one criticism can destroy your momentum. That emotional instability slowly weakens your consistency because you begin to perform for approval instead of purpose. Real self-love begins the moment you decide to approve yourself. That doesn't mean becoming arrogant or closed off to feedback. It means grounding your sense of worth internally rather than externally. It means knowing who you are even when nobody is watching, liking, or supporting. Especially then. The hardest moments to believe in yourself are the moments that shape unshakable confidence. Anyone can feel confident when they're praised. Very few can stay committed when they're ignored. That quiet confidence, built in silence, is powerful because it cannot be taken away. When you stop chasing approval, your behavior changes. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. You stop shrinking your goals to make others comfortable. You stop abandoning your standards just to belong. Instead, you move with intention. You act based on alignment, not applause. This kind of self-approval creates emotional independence. You still appreciate recognition, but you no longer depend on it. Praise becomes a bonus, not a requirement. One of the biggest freedoms that comes from internal validation is consistency. When you no longer need external encouragement to keep going, you become unstoppable. You don't quit just because nobody is clapping. You don't slow down just because progress is invisible. You trust the process because you trust yourself. This is where real growth happens. Most people quit in silence, not because they lack talent, but because they lack internal approval. They mistake quiet seasons for failure, when in reality, those seasons are building discipline, resilience, and belief. Another hidden cost of seeking validation is comparison. When your worth depends on how you're perceived, you constantly measure yourself against others. Their success feels like your failure. Their progress feels like your delay. This mindset steals joy and distorts reality. Self-approval, on the other hand, allows you to focus on your lane. You respect other people's wins without questioning your own path. You understand that timing is personal and growth is not a competition. Here's a simple but powerful example. Imagine someone starting a new creative project or business. In the beginning, they post their work and receive little to no response. No comments, no praise, no encouragement. If their confidence depends on validation, they start doubting themselves. They think maybe they're not good enough, maybe it's not worth continuing, maybe they should stop. But if they approve themselves, they keep going anyway. They focus on improving, learning, and staying consistent. Months later, when people finally notice and praise the work, it looks like overnight success. In reality, it was self-belief during silence that made it possible. The truth is, the world eventually follows those who follow themselves first. Approval from others often comes after results, not before. If you wait for validation to move, you'll stay stuck. If you move with self-approval, validation becomes inevitable. Loving yourself means trusting your vision even when it's misunderstood, believing in your value even when it's overlooked, and staying consistent even when it's lonely. When you stop looking outside for validation, you take your power back. You become steady instead of reactive, confident instead of anxious, focused instead of distracted. You stop living for applause and start living with purpose. And from that place, your peace is no longer rented, it's owned. Discipline is one of the most misunderstood forms of self-love because it doesn't always feel good in the moment. Many people associate self-love with comfort, rest, indulgence, and positive feelings, but real self-love often looks like doing the hard thing when nobody is watching. It is choosing what strengthens you over what soothes you temporarily. Discipline is not punishment. It is protection. It is the act of caring enough about your future self to make decisions today that build stability, confidence, and respect tomorrow. When you lack discipline, your life becomes controlled by moods. You work when you feel inspired. You rest when you feel tired. You quit when things get uncomfortable. Over time, this creates inconsistency, and inconsistency slowly erodes self-trust. You begin to doubt your own word. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. That gap between what you promise yourself and what you actually do becomes a source of quiet frustration and low self-esteem. Discipline closes that gap. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you rebuild trust with yourself. And self-trust is the backbone of confidence. Discipline is also about delayed gratification. It's understanding that short-term pleasure often leads to long-term regret, while short-term discomfort often leads to long-term freedom. Waking up early, training your body, studying when it's boring, saving money instead of spending it impulsively, walking away from distractions. None of these feel exciting in the moment, but they compound, they create momentum, they shape identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That identity shift is powerful because once you believe you're disciplined, your actions naturally align with that belief. Another important truth is that discipline simplifies life. When you rely on motivation, everything feels like a struggle. Motivation is emotional and unpredictable. Some days it's there, most days it's not. Discipline removes the need to negotiate with yourself every morning. You don't debate whether to show up, you just do. This mental clarity saves energy and reduces anxiety. You're no longer fighting yourself, you're aligned with yourself. That alignment creates peace because you know you're moving in the right direction even if progress feels slow. Discipline is also an act of self-respect. It says, I take my goals seriously. When you constantly break promises to yourself, you unconsciously tell yourself that your dreams don't matter. But when you honor your commitments, you communicate value. You show yourself that your time is important, your growth is important, and your future is worth sacrificing for. This kind of self-love doesn't need external validation. It builds quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't disappear when things get hard. Fear loses its grip when discipline becomes a habit. Fear thrives in uncertainty and hesitation. When you're consistent, even in small ways, fear has less room to operate. You stop being afraid of failure because you trust your ability to show up again. You stop being afraid of judgment because you're focused on progress, not opinions. Discipline doesn't make you fearless. It makes you resilient. And resilience is far more valuable. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine someone who wants to improve their life by getting in better shape. At first, they rely on motivation. Some days they work out, some days they don't. When motivation fades, so does progress. They start feeling disappointed in themselves, which lowers their confidence even more. Now imagine that same person decides to commit to a simple rule. They will exercise for just 20 minutes every morning, no matter how they feel. Some days it feels easy, other days it feels exhausting. But they show up anyway. After a few weeks, something changes. Their body improves, but more importantly, their mindset does. They start trusting themselves. They realize if I can keep this promise, I can keep others too. That discipline becomes self-love in action. The truth is, discipline is not about being harsh or rigid. It's about being honest with yourself about what you want and then acting in alignment with that truth. It's choosing growth over excuses, commitment over comfort, and long-term respect over short-term pleasure. You don't need motivation every day. You don't need to feel ready. You need consistency. When you discipline yourself, you are telling yourself, I believe in who I'm becoming. And that belief, practiced daily, is one of the highest forms of self-love there is. Running from pain may feel like survival, but it slowly becomes self-betrayal. You cannot truly love yourself while pretending you were never hurt, never disappointed, never broken by something that mattered to you. Healing instead of hiding means having the courage to look at your wounds honestly, without shame and without denial. Pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, it grows quieter, and then it shows up in your reactions, your fears, your relationships, and your self-talk. When you refuse to face what hurt you, you ride into every new chapter of your life. Even when the people and situations have changed, healing is often misunderstood as weakness because it requires vulnerability. It means admitting that something affected you deeply. It means acknowledging loss, rejection, failure, or regret, instead of pretending you're fine. But that honesty is strength. It takes courage to sit with uncomfortable emotions, to reflect instead of distract, and to process instead of suppress. Hiding is easy in the short term. Healing is hard in the beginning, but it pays freedom in the long run. The strongest people are not those who never break, but those who rebuild themselves with awareness. Your scars are proof of survival, not failure. Every mistake you made, every setback you endured, every version of you that didn't know better was doing the best it could with the knowledge and strength it had at the time. When you keep judging your past self, you stay trapped in the past. Self-love grows when you stop punishing yourself for lessons that taught you how to grow. Healing is realizing that what you went through did not destroy you. It shaped you. The pain refined you, gave you depth, empathy, wisdom, and resilience that comfort never could. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful parts of healing, especially forgiveness toward yourself. Many people move forward physically but stay stuck mentally, replaying old decisions and blaming themselves for outcomes they wish they could change. This constant self-criticism becomes a cage. When you forgive yourself, you are not excusing the pain or denying responsibility. You are releasing the weight of shame that keeps you stuck. Forgiveness is freedom. And when you're free internally, your energy shifts externally. You walk differently, you speak differently, you attract different experiences because you're no longer operating from wounds. You reoperating from wisdom. Unhealed pain often controls behavior in subtle ways. It shows up as fear of closeness, fear of failure, fear of trusting again, or fear of being seen. When you heal, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop projecting old pain onto new situations. You stop expecting betrayal where there is none. You begin to live in the present instead of reliving the past. This is where real peace begins. Healing doesn't erase memory, it removes emotional charge. The memory stays, but it no longer controls you. People can feel when someone has done their inner work. There's a calm confidence, a grounded presence, an authenticity that doesn't need approval. That's why healing attracts opportunities. When you're no longer hiding parts of yourself, you show up whole. And the world responds to wholeness. You stop settling for less because you no longer believe you deserve less. You stop chasing validation because you've already made peace with yourself. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine someone who was once betrayed or deeply disappointed by someone they trusted. Instead of healing, they hide the pain and tell themselves it doesn't matter. On the surface, they move on. But inside, they become guarded, suspicious, and emotionally distant. Every new relationship is judged through the lens of old hurt. They push people away or sabotage connections without realizing why. Now imagine that same person choosing to heal. They acknowledge the pain, accept that it hurt, reflect on what they learned, and forgive themselves for trusting. Over time, the fear loosens its grip. When they enter a new relationship, they are cautious but open, aware but not bitter. The past no longer controls the present. That freedom changes everything. Healing is not a one-time event, it's a process. Some days you feel strong, other days old emotions resurface. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Every time you choose honesty over avoidance, compassion over self-blame, and growth over denial, you are practicing self-love. You are telling yourself, I matter enough to heal. The version of you that survived your darkest moments deserves respect, not criticism. Honor that version by healing instead of hiding. Because when you face your pain, you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. And once you do, your life begins to move forward with clarity, strength, and purpose. Choosing growth over approval is one of the hardest and most life-changing decisions a person can make. Approval feels good because it gives immediate comfort. It makes you feel accepted, included, and safe. Growth, on the other hand, often feels uncomfortable, lonely, and uncertain. It asks you to step away from familiar patterns, familiar people, and familiar versions of yourself. That's why so many people stay stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they are afraid of what they might lose if they change. Real self-love begins when you decide that becoming who you're meant to be matters more than being liked for who you used to be. Not everyone will understand your journey, and that's not a problem. It's a reality. People know you through the role you played in their lives, not through your future vision. When you start growing, you stop being predictable. You stop being available in the same way. You stop agreeing just to keep the peace. And that shift can make others uncomfortable. Some people benefited from the old version of you. The one who overgave, stayed quiet, lowered standards, or put their needs first. When you grow, access changes. Expectations change. And not everyone wants to adjust to that. Growth naturally creates separation. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or cold. It means you become aligned. When you start choosing what's best for you, some people will interpret it as rejection. Some will label you as selfish, distant, or changed. But growth always looks like distance to those who aren't growing with you. You are not responsible for maintaining connections that require you to stay small. You are responsible for honoring your potential. Approval often asks you to dim your light. It whispers, don't do too much. Don't outgrow us. Stay how you are so we're comfortable. Growth says the opposite. Growth says expand even if it scares you. Move forward even if they don't clap. Evolve even if it costs you familiarity. Loving yourself means listening to that voice of growth instead of the noise of approval. It means understanding that discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often proof that you're doing something right. Choosing growth also requires emotional strength because it means accepting temporary loneliness. When you outgrow environments or relationships, there can be a gap before new ones appear. That space can feel uncomfortable, but it's necessary. It's where clarity forms. It's where you reconnect with yourself. Many people rush back into old patterns just to avoid that silence. But silence is not emptiness. It's preparation. Growth fills that space with purpose if you allow it. Another truth is that approval is unstable. What people praise you for today, they may criticize tomorrow. If your decisions are guided by reactions, you will constantly adjust yourself to fit expectations that keep changing. Growth, however, is rooted in internal direction. When you choose growth, you stop asking, will they like this? And start asking, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? That shift gives you freedom. You move with intention instead of fear. Here's a simple example. Imagine someone who has always been the available one, always saying ye, always helping, always putting their own goals last to keep relationships intact. When they decide to focus on their career or personal growth, they start saying no more often. They spend less time socializing and more time building their future. Some people in their life feel neglected and complain that they've changed. If that person chooses approval, they'll abandon their goals to return to being accepted. But if they choose growth, they'll accept the discomfort, keep moving forward, and let those who can't respect the new boundaries fall away. Months or years later, they're living a fuller, more aligned life. And the people who truly support them either adjusted or were replaced by healthier connections. Choosing growth over approval doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop sacrificing yourself to keep them comfortable. It means understanding that your life is yours to build, not theirs to approve. The cost of growth may be discomfort, distance, and misunderstanding, but the cost of avoiding growth is far greater. Regret, resentment, and unrealized potential. You are not here to stay small so others feel secure. You are here to elevate, to evolve, to expand into the highest version of yourself. When you choose growth, you choose truth over comfort, progress over popularity, and purpose over permission. And that choice, made consistently, is one of the purest forms of self-love there is. The way you speak to yourself quietly determines the direction of your life. Long before actions become habits and habits become destiny, words become beliefs. Your inner voice is always talking, even when you're not aware of it, And that voice is either training you to move forward or conditioning you to hold back. If you constantly speak to yourself with doubt, criticism, and fear, you will walk through life hesitating, second-guessing, and shrinking your potential. But when you speak to yourself like you're already winning, something powerful begins to shift inside you. Your mind starts to align with growth instead of limitation. Most people are far harsher with themselves than they would ever be with someone they love. They replay mistakes, magnify failures, and use their past as evidence that they are not enough. That kind of self-talk doesn't motivate change, it reinforces identity. When you repeatedly tell yourself you're behind, incapable, or unlucky, your brain accepts it as truth. You begin to act in ways that confirm those words. This is why self-talk is not just talk, it's programming. Words shape identity, and identity shapes the decisions you make when nobody is watching. Speaking to yourself like you're already winning does not mean lying to yourself or ignoring reality. It means choosing language that empowers growth instead of language that reinforces fear. It means acknowledging where you are while affirming where you're going. There's a big difference between saying I'm not there yet and saying I'm failing. One keeps the door open, the other slams it shut. When your inner dialogue reflects belief, patience, and confidence, your behavior naturally follows. Your mind listens to repetition. What you repeatedly say becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar feels true. When you tell yourself, I'm learning, I'm improving, I'm building something meaningful, you begin to move with more confidence. You take better risks. Recover faster from setbacks. You stop interpreting obstacles as signs to quit and start seeing them as part of the process. This doesn't happen overnight, but it compounds. Small shifts in self-talk create massive shifts in mindset over time. Speaking like you're already winning also helps you stay steady during slow seasons. Progress is often invisible before it becomes obvious. If you only speak positively when things are going well, your confidence will collapse the moment things get quiet. But when you practice strong self-talk in silence, you build inner stability. You stop needing constant reassurance from the outside because your encouragement comes from within. That's real confidence, the kind that doesn't disappear when applause fades. Another powerful effect of positive self-talk is how it influences your body and energy. When you speak with doubt, your posture slouches, your voice weakens, and your actions slow down. When you speak with belief, you stand taller, move with purpose, and make decisions faster. Confidence is not just a feeling, it's a physical response to the story you tell yourself. Change the story and your energy changes with it. This kind of self-talk also builds resilience. Everyone faces setbacks, rejection, and moments of uncertainty. The difference between those who keep going and those who quit often comes down to what they say to themselves in those moments. If failure triggers self-attack, motivation dies. If failure triggers encouragement and perspective, growth continues. Talking to yourself like you're already winning means saying, this is temporary, this is teaching me something. I'm still on the path. Those words keep you moving forward when quitting feels easier. Here's a simple example. Imagine someone working toward a big goal, like building a career or improving their life situation. They face a setback, maybe a rejection or a bad result. If their inner voice says, I knew I wasn't good enough, their confidence drops and they hesitate to try again. But if they speak to themselves differently and say, this didn't work, but I'm learning and getting better, their posture stays strong, their effort continues, and their belief remains intact. Over time, that difference in self-talk leads to completely different outcomes, even though the external situation started the same. Talking to yourself like you're already winning doesn't mean you think you've arrived. It means you trust the direction you're moving in. It means you respect the work you're putting in, even before results show up. It means treating yourself with the same encouragement, patience, and belief you would give to someone you care about deeply. You are always listening to yourself. Make sure the voice guiding you forward is one that builds strength, not doubt. Speak belief into your effort. Speak patience into your process. Speak confidence into your future. Because the way you talk to yourself today is shaping the life you'll be living tomorrow. Here's the truth. Nobody is coming to save you. And that's the good news. Because everything you need is already inside you. When you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you stop begging for attention and start commanding respect. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop surviving and start building. Fall in love with your grind. Respect your journey. Protect your peace. Because when you choose yourself every single day, the world has no choice but to recognize your value. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is not ego. This is self-worth. And once you master loving yourself, your life will never be the same.